video driver. Let's go ahead here. One other thing you can do is jump to entry. And what this actually does is it fires up regedit, takes me right to the place on my system, in this case in the run key of the registry, where that thing's located, and you can see it's even highlighted for me. And now if I go back, and let's say I uncheck that, I want to disable that. Come back here and refresh that, and you'll see it's gone. Well, where'd it go? The way this is actually implemented is under the run key here, you'll see a new key called AutoRuns disabled. So essentially it just got moved into there.
Yeah.
So if I want to go re-enable it, I recheck it, it goes back. You can do that. So there are a few other tabs here I can kind of quickly cover a little bit about what they are. There's also pretty good help here to kind of describe these. Explorer is things that kind of hook into Explorer, like I mentioned, and you can see now I'm really only seeing a couple there because I've turned off I've hidden all Microsoft ones. So these are third-party things. I've got Adobe here and an Intel thing. Internet Explorer, this is actually a browser plugin.
Yeah. So when you click on a PDF, it knows to open it up,
Opens it up.
hopefully in the browser.
Right in the browser instead of having to open a separate app. You know, there again, if you get some of those sometimes, maybe they're slowing down your browsing, you can go in Internet Explorer itself and disable those, but you can also do it here.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice having it all in one place. Scheduled tasks, you can see I've got a Flash Player updater that's scheduled to run periodically. There's that gather network info. That's actually a Microsoft thing. It's still showing up because, as I mentioned, it doesn't actually know that it's a Microsoft thing. Services, here again, because I've turned off, I've filtered out all Microsoft ones. I'm only seeing third-party ones here. So you can see I've got a few drivers and things loaded that have installed services, like my ThinkPad Power Management service. Drivers, here I would probably not recommend just randomly disabling these unless you know what you're doing. You could run into problems. If you do run into
that
problems,
RAID driver can't be important.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of these probably aren't really running. And some of them are actually highlighted in yellow here. And the reason for that is the file isn't found. So I've got a little bit of cruft on my system here from, you know, who knows how that happened. But it's kind of, you know, I think actually what happened here is I did something I would not recommend. I actually copied this disk image right over from Andrew's machine, which was a different hardware. So we have some extra drivers maybe sitting around here for his machine that my machine doesn't even need.
That explains the HP one that was in there.
That's why I had an HP and I've got Lenovo drivers. So here again, this is kind of a good example of where you can come in here, see that stuff, and you know, and those probably aren't causing me too much trouble, but they might be loading some stuff that isn't really relevant to my machine. You know, this is a good way to kind of clean that stuff out and check those boxes. Codecs, this is for, you know, multimedia playback. You'll see if you've installed third-party codecs, maybe you went and installed, you know, DivX or some of these things, they'll show up in here. Boot execute. This you probably won't see too much of. Some of the things in sysinternal's AutoRuns, you probably shouldn't see too many things here unless you've got something kind of sketchy on your system, like malware.
Yeah.
Not too many things are going to be in boot execute. This is actually for software that runs before launch. I don't know if you've ever run like a check disk and it says, oh, you have to reboot your system, and then on the next boot, like before you can get into Windows, you'll see this auto check running to check your file system. That is actually one of these sort of boot execute things. You shouldn't really see too many third-party apps in here. Occasionally, I think about the only thing I can think of legitimately that would ever be in there is like certain defrag apps.
Yeah.
To disk defrag, I should say, not defrag the show, but image hijacks here again. Okay, so you remember earlier I fired up Task Manager and Process Explorer came up because we'd set that earlier in an earlier show. This is actually how that's implemented. So when you check that box. What Process Explorer does is it goes and installs itself as an image hijack. And by image in this case, we don't mean like an image file like a JPEG. We mean image like
a disk image.
A program image, an executable.
Yeah.
So what's actually happened is for the Task Manager, whenever Windows goes to launch Task Manager, it goes and looks in this registry key and it gets redirected over here to Process Explorer. Now this is legitimate. We chose to do that. Sometimes you'll have third-party, you'll have malware sometimes that'll inject itself in this kind of way, and you'll see that here. And if you see something like that, you should be kind of suspicious.
So if you go to start one application and something else starts, that might be a good place to go look.
This could be a good place to look, and sometimes the app you want will actually start, but maybe something else also started and then ran the app that you wanted.
Yeah.
We actually use this legitimately for attaching debuggers to certain apps. If you always want an app to run under a debugger, you can implement that through this kind of mechanism. So you'll see those in here if you've done that. But again, that's kind of more advanced Jedi stuff. You're probably not going to see that on a typical machine. Sidebar gadgets. I'm actually not seeing anything here, even though I do have a sidebar gadget, because it is a Microsoft one. And there it is, CPU meter.
Deprecated.
Yes, I believe they have deprecated those now.
Sidebar gadgets are gone.
Yes. And I still have one running on here, but network providers, I believe this is, certain ways for network protocols and things to kind of hook in. LSA providers, you're probably not going to see too many of those, although you may occasionally see something like, say, if you've got a fingerprint reader or some other way of logging onto your machine other than the standard password. That'll show up in here. Print monitors, you can see I have some sort of a third-party Epson print monitor installed here. These are used for printing, and this is actually another thing that we have seen malware use. So if you see something suspicious in there, you may want to try disabling that. WinSock providers, again, another way to kind of hook into the networking stack, not too commonly used. These WinLogon, these are applications that have subscribed to notifications about logon events. In this case, I've got some, it looks like that Intel graphics driver wants to know when somebody logs on. Known DLLs, you're probably not going to see too much of this. This is sort of an optimization. When we launch an app, we look at a list of known DLLs so that we know where they are. We don't have to go look for them. Probably not going to see too much of that that's not Microsoft. There again, if you do, look at it and see. What's happening there? I need to unhide Windows entries. Normally all you'll see are actually parts of Windows. This is something we use internally in Windows. You probably shouldn't see too many things here that are not part of Windows. And AppInit, honestly, I've forgotten what that one is. I don't think it's very. Yeah, that actually is when. It's another way when you launch an app that particular third-party code could get launched into that process's space. So again, not commonly used. In fact, I believe this was disabled starting with Vista. So you probably won't see too many things in there. One other thing I did want to point out here, in terms of knowing what should be there, is you can actually compare against another system. So if I were to come in here and save this, I can save this list of everything starting up on my system. And what I did earlier is I took a totally clean Windows 7 SP1, nothing else installed on it, bare bones, and I saved that. And I can now use that, it's the compare function here. I can come in here, so here's my file I saved earlier from a clean system using AutoRuns. And I can come in here and everything in green that's highlighted is not part of the clean Windows 7 install.
Yeah.
So quite a bit.